Big day on the farm today. It's been warm and dry and windy all week, and the soil is finally the perfect moisture for tilling. This really marks the start of the farm season, so we're off and running. I won't be planting the potatoes for about 3 weeks still, and even though we won't have any vegetables to speak of for 3 months yet, still, from the farm perspective, winter is over. Today I'm going to use this new harrow for the first time. I got this new harrow so I can go a deeper pass with these pretty heavy points here, and do some sort of rough tillage at the beginning of the season without breaking out the big tiller, which is sort of unnecessary at this point. This is made by the Brady company in the 70s. They're apparently originally a crane manufacturer, turned to ag equipment when the big ag movement started. And it looks like a great machine, and I think it's going to work well, but it is clearly not made by a farm machinery manufacturer. Took a bit of work to get set up, so here's what I was up to at the shop for most of yesterday. It is pretty old, everything's loose, and a lot of these springs are broken, but that's all right because I'm going to make it narrower because it's just gigantically wide right now, and the spacing is just completely funny. You can see that these are basically lined up with each other, the front and back shanks, and those two also lined up with each other. That makes no sense. They should be offset and staggered. So I've got to undo a lot of bolts, move things over, tighten things up, get this back into working condition. You can see they're all now at a nice even spacing, looking like a regular field cultivator, but they're still just pretty loose side to side. And since they're supposed to cover all the ground exactly, I'm going to tighten those up a bit. I'll cut off the excess width here on the frame, but I figure I might as well wait till I try it out in the field to make sure this will all work out. Well, this pretty much did the job I was hoping for. It's pretty deep. The entire surface of the ground is tilled up. There aren't any weeds that are still going to be alive. I don't love that there's a clear layer of untilled versus tilled, but considering everything, it certainly does the job I was imagining it could do. This is last year's cabbages. You can see the remnants of them now. It's not been tilled or anything but mown. Normally I need to use another tillage machine first to deal with all this junk on the surface, or use a more aggressive implement entirely. So I think this machine could really be a big improvement. Well, that worked out just as I had hoped it would. You might have noticed, though, I haven't quite figured out how wide this implement is. There are a few wiggles probably visible on that. The working width of the implement is the widest thing I have on the farm, but the frame is wider still. So I'll leave this here at the shop so I can cut the ends of the frames off and fix that up so it'll fit on this farm. Well, this is really good. This is all going to be potatoes. All of this ground I just tilled up here. Another second pass in a couple weeks. Potatoes planted a little bit after that. So here's the farm just from the winter. All flat, nothing interesting, no crops. Cover crop barley from last fall. Growing a little bit now that it's getting warm. This is last year's tomato ground. They're going to be winter squash. This year, there's last year's peppers with the smallest cover crop because that got seeded later because the peppers came out later. That's all going to be squash and cucumbers. If any of you CSA folks remember eating salad mix around Halloween last year, well, this is it. This is what it looks like here over the winter. It's starting to sprout a little bit. Where's one? Starting to sprout up a little bit and then go to seed to try to do its job to make more plants. Ground worked up for early cabbage and onions. Here's the one thing on the farm that somebody's actually gonna eat in July. This is the garlic that was planted last October. Just little closed garlic set in the ground, and they live over winter, and just like any bulbed plant that comes up in your garden, here it is. At the beginning of the week, it was really tiny. It was, it was probably an inch or two tall. Now after one hot week, it's just ready to go, and now it's 4 inches out of the ground. The rows are very visible all the way down. Normally garlic is grown under mulch, a thick layer of straw to block the weeds and protect it over winter. Grows fine here without mulch, except the weeds do come in. This year I'm trying to get away from needing to mulch by cultivating. I've done the first pass over here. You can see what it would have looked like in the aisle, not cultivated. There's weeds very visible, and the garlic is cleaner, but it still needs another pass, so I'm going to do that now. This is a walk-behind finger weeder that I made last year, usually meant for being under a tractor. You can buy a, push finger weeder like this for $1,000. Well, I didn't want to spend $1,000 on it, but I still thought it could be a useful machine. And if this is proof of concept, then maybe I keep using this, and maybe I buy the full setup to run under the tractor someday. This is a pretty cool mechanism. These rubber fingers are driven by these spikes in the ground, and the spikes have a narrower circumference than the fingers, and so the fingers have to turn faster, and they push through the soil a little bit, and they're really soft, so they're not going to damage any of the hard-stemmed plants like a real rooted garlic, and they almost overlap in the middle, so they're pushing the dirt around in between the garlics in here, which is where no other cultivator can get. Normally anything that would cultivate here between the plants would also, of course, kill the plants. So this is something that is a really new functionality for the farm, and I'm looking forward to using it this year. Well, that was that. I'm going to go home for lunch, so that's it for today, but much more happening in the coming weeks. Thanks for watching.